The first denial came from the glass. A soft click. A red pulse on the reader. The kind of polite refusal that still felt like a slap. Julian Crest. Crest Capital. Crest Foundation. Crest everything. Pressed his thumb again. Slower this time, as if speed had been the mistake. The private bank corridor stayed silent. Frosted panels. White marble that swallowed footsteps. A scent of citrus and ozone like a hospital pretending to be a hotel. Behind the glass, a guard in a charcoal suit rested one hand near a holster he didn't need to show. "It's not reading," Julian said, voice flat, controlled, already angry. The woman beside him didn't even look at the door. She looked at the cameras, at the ceiling corners, at the way the LED strip above the corridor shifted when the system switched modes. "It's reading," Mara said. "It's rejecting." Julian's jaw flexed. He was used to doors opening before he reached them. He was used to people moving like gravity had changed. "Who are you?" he asked, like the answer was supposed to be obvious. Mara's hands were empty. No weapon, no bag. Just an off-duty black hoodie over a diner uniform. Hair tied tight. A faint smell of coffee and dish soap clinging to her like a second skin. She stood close enough that he could hear her breath. Steady, measured, as if she'd rehearsed this corridor in her head 100 times. "Right now," she said, "I'm the only reason you're not about to be escorted out of your own bank." The guard's earpiece crackled. Another guard appeared at the far end, walking in that slow, deliberate way that said, "We're already decided. We're just waiting for you to catch up." Julian turned his head a fraction. The second guard's eyes weren't on Mara. They were on Julian. That was the part that made his stomach drop. "They don't take my calls," Julian said. He tried to make it sound like an inconvenience, not a disaster. "That's new." "It's not new," Mara said. "It's just new for you." Julian stepped closer, lowering his voice like money itself could still bend the air. "You think you're holding me hostage with a door?" Mara finally looked at him. Up close, her face was calm, in a way that wasn't brave. It was calculated, like a lock that didn't care who was turning the key. "Not a door," she said. "Your identity." She nodded once toward his wrist. Patek Philippe, steel, understated for a man who could buy the brand. "That watch doesn't matter here. Your name doesn't matter here. Only what's in your wallet matters. And you don't have it." Julian's eyes hardened. "Give it back." "Not yet." The guards were closer now, 10 meters, 8. Their shoes made no sound on the marble. Their hands were still relaxed, which meant the violence was ready but optional. Mara lifted her chin toward the camera dome above them. "One word from me," she said, quiet enough that only he could hear. "And your access dies everywhere at once. Cards, elevators, vehicles, your penthouse, your planes, your family's trust accounts, your foundation. Everything that makes you, you in this city. You'll be a suit, with an expensive watch, standing in a hallway, begging a minimum wage guard to let you breathe." Julian stared at her like she'd just spoken in a language he didn't believe existed. Then his phone buzzed again in his pocket. Another notification. Another denial. Another polite red line across his life. He swallowed it down, the instinct to bark orders, to crush, to buy. Mara's voice didn't rise. "Follow my instructions," she said, "and you get it back before sunset." "Instructions," Julian repeated, tasting the word like poison. "Orders," Mara corrected. The nearest guard stopped 3 steps away. "Mr. Crest," the guard said, not respectfully, not warmly. Official. Final. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to step away from the secured corridor." Julian didn't move. Mara did. She took one small step forward, almost casual, placing herself half a body between Julian and the guard, like she owned the space. "He's with me," she said. The guard blinked once, confused. Then his gaze flicked up to the camera. He touched his earpiece, listening. His expression shifted, just a fraction, like someone had just told him a rule that made no sense but still had to be obeyed. "Ma'am," he said to Mara now. "This way." Julian felt something cold. Not fear exactly. Something worse. A world where his name didn't work. Mara didn't look back at him. "Walk," she said. And Julian Crest, billionaire kingpin of finance, walked. 12 hours earlier, Mara's world had been smaller. Grease-stained tiles, the burn of sanitizer on cracked knuckles, the constant hum of a dishwasher that never stopped. The halcyon room sat above Midtown, like a secret, velvet-rope discretion wrapped in smoked glass. You didn't find it on maps. You didn't tag it. You were either invited, or you didn't exist. Mara existed the way staff existed. Present, necessary, unnoticed. She carried crystal tumblers that cost more than her rent. She listened to men in Kashmir joke about layoffs like weather. She smiled until her cheeks hurt and pretended not to hear her own name mispronounced by people who didn't care enough to learn it. That night, the air was expensive. Oud cologne, truffle salt, cold vodka, roses dying slowly in black vases. A pianist played something soft and sad that nobody listened to. And then Julian Crest arrived, and the room adjusted around him. Not with applause, with space. Security in plain suits slid into corners. A host in a Tom Ford jacket appeared as if summoned. Mara saw Julian's fiancée at his side, Serena Hale, all sharp edges and perfect hair, the kind of woman who looked like she'd never been told no without charging interest. They took the best table without asking. Mara approached with a tray. Eyes down the way you learn to keep them down. And still she caught fragments. "He missed the margin call," Serena said, amused. "He cried." Julian chuckled like it was entertainment. "Crying is honest," Julian said. "It's just not useful." Mara poured water. The glass caught the light. Julian's wallet sat on the table beside his phone. Matte black leather, no logo, thick with cards, heavy in a way that said it wasn't just money, it was entry, access, authority. Next to it, a small hardware key, sleek, metal, the kind executives used for secure approvals, hanging off a minimalist loop like an afterthought. A man approached their table, older, nervous, sweating through an expensive shirt. Not a fan, not a friend. Someone who owed. "Mr. Crest," the man began. "Please, I just need—" Julian didn't look up. He lifted 2 fingers. The man stopped mid-sentence like he'd been physically struck. Julian finally met his eyes, bored. "You don't need," Julian said. "You want." The man's mouth opened, closed. "My daughter—" "Don't," Julian said, soft, deadly. "Don't try to decorate your incompetence with a child." Serena smiled into her drink. Mara felt heat rise in her throat, fast and ugly. She turned to leave, and the man, desperate, shaking, grabbed her forearm like she was a railing on a sinking ship. "Please," he whispered. "Just tell him." Mara flinched. Not from the touch, from the fact that Julian's eyes snapped to it. The room went tighter. Security shifted. Julian's gaze travelled from the man's hand on Mara's skin to Mara's face, and Mara knew with a sudden, sick clarity, that in his world, even her body was a boundary others needed permission to cross. "Let go," Julian said to the man, calm as an invoice. The man released her instantly, apologizing to Julian, not to her. Serena's eyes raked Mara like she was lint. Staff should be trained not to be... interactive, Serena said. It makes guests uncomfortable. Mara held her tray steady. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She could feel how invisible she was, until she wasn't. Julian studied her for one extra beat. Not lust, not kindness. Appraisal. Like a safe he might one day crack for sport. She's fine, Julian said, and somehow that was worse. He reached for his wallet without looking, a lazy motion, and Mara saw the exact habit. Right hand, thumb under the edge, lift, pocket. Routine, automatic, untouchable. Serena leaned in, voice like silk over a blade. Make her apologize, she murmured, just loud enough. Julian's mouth twitched. He enjoyed this. Apologize, he said to Mara, as if the word belonged to him. Mara's hands didn't shake, not because she wasn't afraid, because something in her clicked into place, clean and quiet. She lowered the tray. For what? She asked. The table went still. Serena's smile sharpened. Julian's eyes narrowed, the first hint of interest. For forgetting your place, Serena said. Mara looked at the wallet, looked at the key, looked at Julian's security watching the room, not watching his hands. And in the space of one breath, Mara Vance made a decision that would erase a billionaire from his own life. She said, I'm sorry. And as Julian's attention flicked to Serena's satisfied face for half a second, Mara's fingers moved, one smooth, practiced motion, lifting the wallet as if to clear the table, swapping it under the shadow of the tray with a plain black server checkbook, identical in size, identical in shape, the kind nobody ever noticed because nobody ever looked at what the help carried. Julian slid the decoy into his jacket without a glance. Mara walked away with the real weight of his world against her palm, her pulse hammering, her mouth tasting like copper. And behind her, she felt it, felt the moment the air changed, because Julian's gaze followed her this time, sharper, hunting, like he'd just realized the waitress wasn't invisible anymore. What would you do if the richest man in the room suddenly had to obey you? Mara didn't run like someone who'd stolen cash. Cash could be spent, traced, burned. This was different. The wallet sat in her hoodie pocket like a live animal, warm from Julian's body heat, heavier than leather had any right to be. She cut through the staff corridor behind the halcyon room, past crates of imported champagne and a silent row of tailored coats, the air changing from oud and truffle to bleach and fryer oil in 3 steps. Her fingers tingled where the edge of the wallet pressed her palm. She didn't look back. Looking back was how people got caught. In the women's restroom, she locked herself into the last stall and listened. Piano upstairs, laughter muffled through vents, the distant clink of glass. Then she opened it. No family photos, no sentimental receipts, just power, stacked and alphabetized. A matte black Centurion, a private bank card with no issuer name, just a crest and a string of numbers that looked more like a key than an account. A metal token on a minimalist loop, cold and dense, the kind executives used to approve transfers that never touched public rails. A building access card stamped with a simple C that meant nothing to most people and everything to doors. Mara's throat tightened. She'd carried plates all her life. She knew weight. This wasn't money. This was permission. She snapped the wallet shut, breathed once, and did the only smart thing she could do in that moment. She became invisible again. She walked out, head down, tray in hand, smiled at the host like nothing had happened, slipped through the kitchen and out into the alley where the city's winter air hit her face like a slap. A delivery truck idled, diesel and hot rubber. A garbage bag split, sour wine and citrus peel. Her hands shook once, violently, then steadied. She pulled out her phone, cracked screen, prepaid plan, and typed 2 numbers she'd overheard 100 times from drunk bankers bragging. The private line to Aurora Private's after-hours desk, and the extension to Crest Capital's internal security. She didn't call. Not yet. Calling was noise. Noise got you dead. She walked 3 blocks, ducked into a bodega, bought a coffee she didn't drink, used the restroom to wipe her fingerprints from the token with a paper towel, and kept moving until the halcyon room was just another building that didn't know it had been robbed. Upstairs, Julian Crest laughed at something Serena said and patted his jacket pocket out of habit, feeling the shape he expected, and his brain filed it under normal, safe, owned. The lie lasted until morning. At 6:12 a.m., sunlight knifed between skyscrapers and cut across Julian's penthouse like a spotlight. He woke to the sound of his phone buzzing, calendar reminders, market alerts, and then the first message that mattered. Payment declined. He sat up, frowning at the screen like it was misbehaving. Declines happened to other people. He tried again with another card. Declined. He swung his legs out of bed, bare feet on heated stone, and the apartment's automated shades didn't rise. He said, "Open," without raising his voice. Nothing. He glanced to the door panel. The indicator that usually glowed soft green was dark. His stomach tightened, a sharp little muscle memory he hadn't used since he was young and broke and furious about it. He pulled on sweatpants, went to the bar, grabbed his jacket from the chair where it had been tossed in a perfect arc last night, and reached into the inner pocket for the wallet. His hand closed around something, the wrong thickness, the wrong smell. Not leather, but cheap, faux leather, waxy, generic. He yanked it out. A server checkbook stared back at him like a joke. For 1 full second, Julian didn't move. Then he tore it open, fingers shaking now, and found nothing. No cards, no token. Just a pen on a chain and a stack of blank slips with the halcyon room logo. "No," he breathed, and it came out like a threat. He stormed into his dressing area, grabbed his phone, and hit Gideon Park's direct line. Gideon answered on the second ring, too fast, already awake, voice smooth. "Julian?" "I'm locked out," Julian said. "Everything. Aurora, Crest, building, all of it." A pause. Not surprise. Calculation. "That's not possible," Gideon said, the kind of calm that made a man want to break glass. "We have redundancies." "I'm holding a waitress's checkbook," Julian snapped. "So unless your redundancies include jokes, you're going to fix this." Gideon inhaled softly. "Where are you?" "Home." "Don't leave," Gideon said. "Security is en route." Julian's eyes narrowed at the word en route. Like Gideon had said, "We're coming to collect you." "Call Aurora," Julian said. "Put me through to the desk." "They're not taking requests without verification," Gideon replied. And Julian heard it then. The shift. The tiniest tilt in Gideon's tone that said the balance had moved, and Gideon knew it. Julian hung up and called Serena. She answered with wind in the background and camera shutters, her voice bright and cold. "Julian, I'm stepping on stage." "My wallet is gone," he said. Silence, then a small laugh like she thought he was joking. "You don't lose your wallet," Serena said. "People lose their lives before you lose anything." "It was swapped," Julian said, "at the halcyon room." Serena's breath sharpened. "By who?" "I don't know." "Find out," she said, and the warmth in her voice disappeared entirely. "Because if you've been compromised, I'm compromised, and I don't do vulnerable." The line went dead. Julian stood in the middle of his penthouse, city humming below, and felt something he hated more than fear: being handled. His head snapped toward the security console by the entrance. He tapped the panel. "Access denied." The words might as well have been a punch. He tried the elevator call on his phone's building app. Error. He tried his garage key fob. Dead. His driver's number went to voicemail. His pilot's number didn't even ring. It played a recorded message. "This subscriber is unavailable." Julian's world, built on invisible permissions, was being turned off like lights. He forced himself to breathe. If you can't buy your way out, you hunt your way out. He went to his closet safe, the old-fashioned kind with a dial, steel and mechanical teeth, the one thing he kept because it didn't need a server. He opened it and pulled out cash, real cash, like a ghost from another life. Then he did something he hadn't done in years. He left his penthouse through the service stairs because the main elevator wouldn't recognize him, and the idea of being escorted by his own guards made his skin crawl. On the street, the cold hit his lungs. He walked without an entourage, hood up, shoulders tight, a billionaire dressed like a man who didn't want to be seen. He cut 3 avenues, eyes scanning reflections, cameras, patterns. He replayed last night in his mind like security footage. Serena's smile, the debtor's hand on the waitress's arm, the half-second when Julian's attention had shifted, just once, away from the table. He remembered the waitress's voice when she said, "For what?" Not apologetic, not scared, interested. He remembered something else too, something stupidly small. She had set the tray down without a sound. No clink, no scrape. Like she knew how to move without being noticed. Julian reached the halcyon room's morning management entrance and flashed cash at a bored doorman who didn't recognize him in a hoodie. Inside, the manager went pale when he heard Julian's name. "Sir, this can't be," the manager stammered. Julian leaned in, voice low. "Tell me who waited my table." "Mara," the manager said quickly. "Mara Vance. Newer. Quiet. Always on time." Quiet. Always on time. The kind of person who watched. Julian's phone buzzed again. Another denial. Another red line. His teeth ground together. "Where does she go after shift?" he asked. The manager hesitated. Julian slid $300 bills across the desk. The manager didn't hesitate anymore. "There's a diner," he said, "on 9th. Staff grab food. She goes there sometimes." Julian turned and left before the manager finished the sentence. 9th Avenue was loud with trucks and steam vents. The diner was bright and cheap, fluorescent light bouncing off chrome, the smell of bacon grease and burnt coffee cutting through the winter air. A bell chimed as Julian pushed the door open. Heads didn't turn. No one knew who he was without the suit, without the aura. Then he saw her behind the counter, wiping a mug like it mattered, hair tied back, eyes up, calm as a locked door. Julian took one step towards her, and she spoke before he could say a word, voice level, like she'd been expecting him all morning. "You're early, Mr. Crest." Julian didn't sit at the counter. He took the corner booth with the best sightline like instinct, back to the wall, eyes on the door, cash already out, like he could still solve problems by making them smaller and quieter. Mara didn't offer a menu. She slid a chipped mug of coffee towards him, too hot, too cheap, too real, and sat opposite without asking permission, elbows on laminate, gaze steady. For a second he just watched her hands. Clean nails, tiny burn mark on the thumb, calluses where silverware rubbed. The kind of hands that didn't belong near private banking corridors. "How much?" he asked. His voice was calm on purpose, the way you speak to a dog you want to bite. Mara let the question hang like smoke. "You think this is about money?" she said. "It's about control," Julian replied, eyes narrowing. "Same thing." Mara's mouth twitched once, almost a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "No." "Money is what you use," she said. "Control is what you are." Julian leaned forward, lowering his voice. "You stole from me in a room with cameras and security. That means one of 2 things," he said. "You're either stupid, or you're not who you look like." There it was, the waitress can't do that moment.
the thing he couldn't unsee. Mara didn't flinch. She pulled Julian's wallet from her hoodie like it was a set of keys, not a king's crown, and placed it on the table. Leather whisper. Wait. Julian's pupils tightened. His hand twitched toward it and stopped, because Mara's fingers rested on the metal token looped to the side, and Julian knew exactly what that token meant. 2-factor approvals. Private rails. The part of his life that never existed on paper. Don't, Mara said. One word, soft as a napkin, sharp as a blade. Julian's hand froze mid-air. That, more than anything, was the new world. Him pausing for a waitress. Mara tilted the token so the diner's fluorescent light caught it, silver flashing like a signal mirror. I called Aurora at 2 a.m., she said. Not your banker, not your assistant, their fraud desk. I told them your wallet was compromised. Julian's face hardened. They wouldn't act on an anonymous call. They did, Mara said, and her voice stayed flat because she didn't need to sell it. Because I had this. She tapped the token. And because I used words they're trained to fear. Credential theft. Coercion. High-risk beneficiary. Then I gave them a name they recognize faster than yours. Julian's eyes sharpened. Whose name? Mara sipped her coffee like it didn't taste like ash. Gideon Park. Julian went still. Not rage, not yet. The first taste of something colder. Possibility. Mara watched it happen in his face and felt her pulse jump anyway. Gideon was the spine of his company, his calm, his protocols. If Gideon got nervous, it meant the rot was real. You're lying, Julian said, but his voice lost a millimeter of certainty.
Mara reached into her pocket and slid her cracked phone across the table. Screen open. A single email confirmation. No logos. No warmth. Aurora. Private compliance hold initiated. In-person verification required. Dual control release. Second authorized party present. Julian's throat tightened. Second party, he repeated. That's you. That's whoever has the token, Mara said. Right now, that's me. Julian's jaw worked once. You realize what you've done, he said. You've made yourself a target. I've been a target my whole life, Mara said. I just didn't know it had a price tag until I watched you put one on someone last night. Julian's eyes flicked, quick, to her wrist, the faint red mark where the debtor had grabbed her. A flash of guilt tried to surface. He smothered it, like he smothered everything inconvenient. So what do you want? He asked. You want me to beg? Apologize? Write you a check? Mara leaned in, close enough that Julian caught the scent of dish soap and winter air. I want you to follow orders, she said. Today. Julian gave a short, humorless laugh. No. Mara's thumb hovered over her phone. Yes, she said. Julian's smile disappeared. Try me, he said. Mara didn't raise her voice. She didn't threaten his life. She threatened his oxygen. Order one, she said. You do not call Gideon. You do not call Serena. You do not send a text to anyone who has ever sat at a board table with you. The second you do, Aurora escalates the hold and you become a compliance incident. Your world doesn't like incidents. Julian stared at her, furious. Mara continued like she was reading a grocery list. Order 2. You walk into Aurora Private with me, and you say the words I tell you to say, out loud, in front of their people. Julian's face tightened. And if I don't? Mara's eyes didn't blink. Then you keep being a man in a hoodie with cash in his pocket, she said. And the next time you try your building door, it's going to say access denied until your name is just a rumor. Julian's fingers dug into his knee under the table. He wanted to stand, to loom, to crush. But the diner was full of ordinary people, chewing pancakes and living lives that didn't require permission. And for the first time in a long time, he felt exposed, like a predator without teeth. Mara softened her voice by half a degree. Not kindness, strategy. You can walk out, she said. You can make this a war, but you won't win it fast. And today is about fast. Julian held her gaze. He tried to find fear. He found focus. What's Order 3? He asked. Mara's heart hit her ribs. She didn't let it show. Order 3, she said. You put your trust in me for one day. Julian's mouth twitched, almost a smile, almost admiration, almost anger. You're insane, he said. Maybe, Mara replied, but I'm the only person in this city who can open your doors. She pushed the wallet towards herself again, keeping the token under her finger. Time, she added, glancing at the diner clock like it was a bomb. 9 hours until markets close. 8 until Gideon realizes you're not coming back online. 7 until Serena decides this is a humiliation she can't afford. Julian's phone buzzed on the table. No service message, no access, just a dead screen with a corporate wallpaper that suddenly looked like a lie. He exhaled through his nose, slow. Say the words, he said. Mara stood. Good, she said, because we're leaving now. Outside, a black SUV rolled past the diner, too slow, windows tinted, the kind of slow that wasn't traffic. Mara's skin prickled. Julian saw it too. He reached instinctively for a non-existent security detail. Mara grabbed his sleeve, not gently. Not your car, she said. Not your driver. You can't be serious, Julian snapped. Watch me, Mara said, and pulled him into the street like she owned him. A yellow cab hissed to the curb. Julian started to argue. The cabbie's eyes widened at the cash Julian slapped down. Real cash, humiliating cash, and the door clicked open. They slid into the back seat, vinyl cracked, heater blasting dust. Mara gave an address without looking at Julian. Aurora Private, Hudson Yards, she said. The cab lurched forward. Behind them, the black SUV turned at the next light, following. Julian's gaze tracked it in the rear window. That's mine, he said, voice tight. Not anymore, Mara replied. She pulled the wallet from her pocket again, checked the token like a compass, then looked at him. When we walk in, she said, you don't posture. You don't charm. You don't threaten. You say, I'm here for an in-person dual control release. My second party has my token. Julian stared at her. They won't accept you. Mara's eyes stayed on the road ahead, city flashing by like cutscenes. They will, she said, because the system already did. The Aurora lobby was ice and glass and quiet money. White stone, abstract art that looked like tax evasion, a scent of bergamot and polished metal. A receptionist in a blazer that cost more than Mara's car payment looked up and smiled at Julian automatically. Then her smile faltered when the security gate behind her pinged red. Mr. Crest, she said, confusion sharpening. Dual control release, Julian said, voice clipped, exactly as Mara had drilled him. He felt ridiculous. He also felt the air shift when the receptionist's eyes flicked to Mara's hand, where the token caught the light, and her whole posture changed. The smile turned professional, the kind you use when compliance is watching. Of course, she said too quickly.
Right this way. A guard appeared, not aggressive, but positioned. Julian's pride flared. Mara's fingers brushed his wrist, light, warning, and he swallowed it. They moved through a side corridor where the carpet ate sound. Cameras tracked.
Doors opened without Julian touching them, because Mara's token was doing the talking. Julian's skin crawled at how cleanly it worked. At the final frosted glass door, the reader flashed, then paused, as if thinking. Julian recognized the corridor from the worst part of his morning nightmares, the place where men like him either got what they wanted or got escorted out. Mara stepped closer to the panel, token angled, phone ready. The light went green. The door sighed open. Beyond it, a smaller room, colder, with a single steel drawer pulled out on a track like a tongue. An empty track. No envelope, no ledger, no backup key. Just a faint rectangle of dust where something had been sitting for years. Until someone took it. Mara's lungs locked. Julian's eyes narrowed, going sharp and dangerous. And somewhere behind them in the corridor, a guard's earpiece crackled with a name that made Mara's blood go cold. Serena Hale is downstairs. She says she's here for Mr. Crest. Mara stared at the empty steel track and felt the room tilt. Not from shock, from math. Someone had gotten here first. Someone who knew the drawer existed, knew what it held, knew exactly which day Julian would be forced to come in person. Julian's eyes were on the dust outline, like it had insulted him. "That was my contingency," he said, voice tight. "That box doesn't go missing." Mara's gaze flicked to the door, to the camera lens in the corner, to the guard outside who suddenly wouldn't meet Julian's eyes. "It didn't go missing," she said. "It got retrieved." Julian turned to her. By who? Mara didn't answer because the corridor outside had changed. Footsteps, more than one set, not rushing, controlled. The kind of pace people use when they want you to understand they own the hallway. The door opened and Serena Hale walked in like she'd purchased the air by subscription. Camel coat, perfect hair, diamond studs that looked like small, cold decisions. 2 men in black followed her. Private security with polite faces and hard wrists. Behind them, an Aurora compliance officer hovered, smiling like a hostage. Serena's eyes landed on Julian first and softened into performance. "Julian," she said, voice warm enough to fool cameras. "You disappeared." Julian's jaw flexed. "I'm here," he said. Serena's smile slid sideways. "Not like this." Then her gaze moved to Mara, and the warmth vanished. "Oh," Serena said, as if noticing a stain. "The waitress." Mara kept her hands visible, token looped around 2 fingers like a rosary. "Ms. Hale," the compliance officer began, eager. Serena didn't look at him. "You look tired," Serena said to Mara. "Do they not allow staff to sleep?" Julian stepped forward, anger flaring. "Serena, stop." Serena's head tilted, amused. "Stop what? Cleaning up?" She glanced at the empty drawer. "This is adorable. The 2 of you playing spy in a private bank." Mara watched Serena's eyes, how they took in everything. The token, Julian's hoodie, the guard's posture. Serena knew what mattered. That was why she was dangerous. "You called Aurora," Serena said to Mara, voice still light. "You triggered a compliance hold on Julian's identity. Do you have any idea how many alarms that sets off?" "Enough," Mara said. "That was the point." Serena's lips parted in a small laugh. "Listen to her," Serena said to Julian, like Mara wasn't in the room. "She thinks she's teaching you a lesson." Julian's gaze snapped. "Where's Gideon?" he asked, and the question hit harder than a slap. Serena blinked once, too slow. "Why would Gideon be here?" she replied. Mara's pulse spiked. That half-beat of delay was everything. Serena didn't expect Gideon to be the name. She expected Julian to be panicking about his own access, not about who was standing behind the curtain. Mara leaned slightly toward Julian without looking at him. "She's not here to help you," Mara murmured. "She's here to contain you." Serena's eyes narrowed.
What did you say?
Mara lifted her phone calmly. "I said Aurora should document that you arrived with private security to pressure a compliance event," Mara said, voice steady, loud enough for the camera. The compliance officer stiffened like he'd been handed a live wire. "Ma'am, we do not interfere," the officer forced out, to Serena, suddenly remembering his job. Serena's smile stayed in place, but her eyes cooled. "Pressure," Serena repeated. "Sweetheart, you're not important enough to pressure." She stepped closer, stopping just outside arm's reach, perfume sharp as cut glass. "Give me the token," Serena said softly, "and I'll make this disappear. I'll even give you money. Real money. The kind that changes your whole bloodline." Julian's gaze flicked to Mara, expecting greed, expecting weakness. Mara didn't look at Serena. She looked at Julian. "That's your world," Mara said to him. "Every problem is a number." Serena's smile thinned. "Julian," she said, voice turning intimate, possessive. "Tell her." Julian didn't. His silence was its own betrayal, and Serena noticed. She turned her head just slightly, and one of her men shifted his stance, subtle. Mara clocked it instantly. Not a punch, not yet. A move to separate, to isolate, to get the token without a scene. Mara stepped back half a pace, token disappearing into her fist, and spoke to the compliance officer again. "If I don't walk out of this bank in the next 60 seconds, she said, "I'm filing a coercion report. You'll be obligated to lock everything permanently until federal review." The officer went pale. Serena's nostrils flared, Julian's eyes sharpened, like he was seeing the weapon in Mara's mouth. Not violence, procedure. The compliance officer swallowed. "We're ending this meeting," he said quickly. "All parties will exit the premises. Mr. Crest, we'll contact you with next steps." "Next steps," Julian repeated, bitter. Serena leaned in close enough that only Mara would hear. "You can't keep it," Serena whispered. "People like you don't get to hold power without consequences." Mara met her eyes for the first time. "People like you," Mara said, quiet, "think consequences are for other people." Serena's smile snapped back on. "Darling," she said to Julian, louder now for the cameras. "Call me when you're done playing." And then she walked out like she'd won, because in her mind, she always did. In the corridor, the guards guided them toward the exit as if Julian were a liability. Outside, winter air hit them hard. A black SUV idled at the curb, too clean, too patient. Another waited across the street. Julian's shoulders tightened. "That's not mine," he said. "No," Mara replied. "That's the people who are using your name while you're offline." Julian stared ahead, face tightening into a shape Mara recognized from last night. Predatory focus. "Gideon," he said again, tasting it. Mara nodded once. "Who else has dual control access to your contingency box?" Julian's mouth opened, then shut. He didn't like admitting it. "Gideon does," he said. "And Serena." Mara's pulse steadied into something colder. "Then the empty drawer wasn't a mistake," she said. "It was a reset. They pulled your backup key, so you couldn't come back online without them." Julian exhaled, sharp. "We go to Crest Tower," he said. "My office has an offline safe." Mara watched the SUVs. "We don't go in your car,"
she said. Julian's eyes flashed. I don't have a car. The sentence tasted humiliating. Mara grabbed his sleeve again, firm. Then you move like someone who's hunted, she said, not someone who's worshipped. They cut through a pedestrian plaza, weaving between tourists, blending into ordinary bodies. Mara used shop windows as mirrors, tracking reflections. One SUV rolled forward slowly. A man on the corner raised a phone, not for a selfie, too focused.
Mara pulled Julian into a crowded pharmacy and out the side door, straight into a delivery corridor that smelled like cardboard and bleach. Julian followed without arguing, and that was when Mara felt it. The shift. Not because he trusted her, because he had no other options. They surfaced 2 blocks later, jumped into a battered rideshare with a dented door, and the driver didn't recognize Julian at all. Mara gave the address, Crest Tower. The skyline rose around them like teeth. Julian stared out the window, jaw set. You did this just to punish me, he said. But the accusation didn't have heat anymore. It had curiosity. Mara didn't look at him. I did it because last night you proved something, she said. Your money isn't a tool, it's a weapon, and you aim it at whoever's smallest. Julian's voice dropped. You think I didn't notice? Mara's throat tightened. Notice what? Julian's gaze stayed on the city, but his words landed carefully, like he was revealing a card he'd kept hidden. When you asked, for what? He said. I heard it. I watched you. And I felt my wallet leave my table. Mara's head snapped toward him despite herself. Julian's eyes met hers for the first time without arrogance. I didn't stop it, he said. Not because I was distracted, because I wanted to see who had the nerve. The confession hit Mara like a hand around her throat. Half insult, half respect. Dangerously intimate. So you let me, she said. I tested you, Julian replied. And you passed. The rideshare slowed near Crest Tower. The lobby doors were guarded now. Extra security, extra eyes. Julian's name on the building's wall meant nothing if the system said no. Mara's fingers tightened around the token. Whatever's happening, Julian said, voice low. Gideon isn't improvising. Mara swallowed, then made her decision. She pulled out her phone and tapped a single button. An unsent draft email addressed to 3 places with no warmth in their names. A regulator contact, a journalist tip line, and an attorney's encrypted inbox. The subject line was already written. Crest, dual control abuse / shadow ledger. Julian noticed. What is that? He asked. Mara's eyes stayed on the building. Insurance, she said. If I disappear, it sends. Julian's gaze sharpened, and for the first time there was something like respect edged with fear. Not of her muscles, but of her preparation. The car stopped. Mara opened the door. Stay close, she said. Julian stepped out into the cold with her, suitless, offline, human. They walked toward the glass doors, and before they reached them, a familiar voice cut through the lobby noise behind the security line, smooth as poison. Marianne Vale, Serena Hale said, smiling like she'd been waiting all her life to say it. Or are you calling yourself Mara Vance now? Mara's stomach went cold at the sound of that name in Serena's mouth. Marianne Vale. Because it meant Serena hadn't guessed. She'd verified. The Crest Tower lobby looked like a museum curated by people who hated fingerprints. Black stone floors polished to a mirror, a living wall that smelled faintly of wet moss, a minimalist sculpture that cost more than the diner, and a security line staffed by men in identical navy suits with identical earpieces and identical empty eyes. Serena stood behind them like a patron saint of leverage, phone in hand, smile perfect. You really thought a hoodie and a new last name makes you invisible, Serena said, voice carrying just enough to turn heads without sounding like a scene. Mara kept her face still, but her pulse slammed in her ears. Julian was beside her, jaw tight, watching Serena like he'd never seen her from this angle before. Predator, not partner. Say it again, Julian said, low. Serena's eyes didn't leave Mara. Marianne Vale, she repeated. The analyst who resigned after she saw a ledger she wasn't meant to see. The one who tried to report it and suddenly couldn't open a bank account anywhere. The one who ended up serving cocktails to the men who ruined her. Mara felt the token bite into her palm. So that was the game. Not theft, erasure, financial death by 1,000 invisible denials. Serena leaned in a fraction, sweet as perfume. Give me the token, Marianne, she said. Give me the wallet, and I will restore your life. Clean credit, a real identity, a number so high you'll never smell fryer oil again. Mara heard the lie inside the offer. Serena didn't want her rich. Serena wanted her quiet. Julian's voice cut in, sharp. Why do you know her old name? Serena finally looked at him, and the warmth returned like a mask. Because I protect you, she said. Someone had to. Julian's eyes narrowed. From what? He asked. From the consequences of your company, Serena replied, too fast, and that was the crack. Mara took one step forward, just enough that the nearest guard's hand floated closer to his belt. We're going upstairs, Julian said to security, defaulting to authority out of habit. The head of security, tower staff, not Julian's man, glanced at Serena before answering. That glance was the whole story. Mr. Crest, the guard said, polite and firm. We can't grant access without active credentials. Julian's mouth tightened. You work for me. He works for the building, Serena said softly, enjoying it. Mara forced her breath to slow. Procedure. Use procedure. She lifted the token, let it catch the lobby light like a signal flare. Dual control credential, she said, loud enough for the cameras. I'm here to meet legal on the 42nd floor regarding a compliance incident. Serena's smile twitched. Legal doesn't meet waitresses. Legal meets risk, Mara replied. And I'm the risk. A man in a grey Brioni suit emerged from the side corridor then. Crest Tower's general counsel, face tight, eyes darting like he'd been dragged out of bed by a nightmare. He stopped when he saw Serena, then Julian, then Mara, and his expression went to the same colour as the marble. This is not a lobby conversation, he said quickly. Serena's eyes sharpened. Tell her to hand it over, Serena said. The counsel hesitated. Not long, just long enough. Mara clocked it. He didn't take orders from Serena by choice. He took them because someone else had his leash. Gideon. Mara felt the shadow before it arrived, an elevator chime that didn't belong, the soft rush of air as a service bank opened behind the security desk. She didn't turn her head. Turning was how you lost seconds. Move, Mara murmured to Julian and grabbed his sleeve, dragging him towards the side corridor marked staff only. Julian resisted for half a beat, pride reflex, then followed when he saw it too. Two men stepping out of the service elevator, not tower security, not Serena's, dressed like consultants with the posture of muscle. One of them had an ear cuff with a tiny green LED, private comms, Gideon's style. Stop them, Serena snapped, and the lobby surged. Mara yanked open the staff-only door and shoved Julian through into a fluorescent-lit corridor that smelled of printer toner and bleach. A keypad glowed red. Mara slapped the token to the reader and typed a code she shouldn't have had, but did,
because there were only so many ways a building was wired, and she'd spent nights watching guards punch numbers like prayers. The door clicked green. Julian's eyes flashed. "How?" "Later," Mara said. Their footsteps pounded now, echoing in the service hall. Behind them, someone shouted Mara's old name again like a spell. They hit a service elevator. Mara jammed the button. Nothing. The screen read, "Out of service." Julian swore under his breath. "Gideon's locking us out," he said.
Mara's phone buzzed, and her stomach flipped. An unknown number. A text with one word that felt like a hand around her throat. Stop. Then another. You don't have enough air for this. Julian's gaze snapped to her screen. He's watching, he said. He's inside the system. Mara's throat tightened, but her voice stayed clean. Then we make him show his hands. They bolted up a stairwell, metal steps rattling, emergency lights strobing faintly. On the 23rd floor, the stair door refused to open. Locked from the other side. Mara hit it again, nothing. Julian's breathing was controlled, but she saw the anger in his eyes, being penned like an animal. He's hurting us, Mara said. Julian's mouth curled. He's making a mistake. What mistake? Mara asked. Julian looked at her, and for a second the billionaire mask slipped, replaced by something raw and almost honest. He thinks I'm alone, Julian said. He thinks I'm still predictable. Mara's pulse spiked at the way he said it, as if she had become the variable. She pulled her phone up, thumb hovering over her dead man draft. If he touches me, it sends, she said. Julian's gaze locked on her thumb. Don't, he said. Not yet. Why? Mara snapped, surprised by the heat in her own voice. Because if it sends too early, Julian said, he burns the evidence, and you become a story nobody can prove. He stepped closer, just close enough that she could feel his breath warm against the cold stairwell air. Let me take the hit when it matters, he said. Let me do one thing right. For one dangerous second, Mara believed him. Then the stairwell door above them slammed open and boots thundered down. Mara grabbed Julian's wrist and pulled him upward instead, because down was death. They burst onto the executive mezzanine, carpet thick as silence, art on the walls, glass offices glowing with early morning screens. Crest Capital's logo hovered in brushed metal like a promise. Julian strode toward his own office, but the biometric panel flashed red. Access denied. He laughed once, a hard sound. Cute, he said. Mara's eyes flicked to the corner office across the hall. CFO suite. The door was ajar, light inside, movement. Gideon, Mara breathed. Julian moved first, fast, shoulders squared. They entered, and the room hit Mara with the smell of expensive coffee and printer heat. Gideon Park stood behind the desk in a crisp shirt, tie perfect, as if this was just another Tuesday. Two men flanked him, the consultant Muscle from downstairs, hands empty, violence implied. Gideon smiled like he'd been waiting. Julian, Gideon said, I was wondering when you'd stop making it worse. Julian's voice went ice. You emptied my contingency box. Gideon didn't deny it. I secured it, he said, from exposure. His eyes slid to Mara. From her. Serena's voice came from the doorway then, sweet and furious. From Marianne, Serena corrected, stepping in behind them like a closing gate. Give me the token, Serena said again, but now her tone had lost patience. Or I start breaking things you can't replace. Mara felt the room compress, like oxygen was a commodity again. Gideon lifted a tablet and turned it so Julian could see. A live feed of the Halcyon room security footage paused on Mara's hands under the tray.
proof. You forced my hand, Gideon said, calm. So here's my offer. Julian, sign the resignation document. You step down for health. Serena assumes interim control. We restore your access. And Marianne disappears quietly. Julian stared at the screen, then at Mara. You planned this, Julian said. You used my outage as cover. Gideon's smile thinned. You were always a risk, he said. Too visible, too emotional, too attached to the idea that you're in charge. Serena stepped closer, eyes locked on Mara like she wanted to snap her in half. He's right, Serena said to Julian. Do it. End it.
I'll protect you. Mara's hands tightened around the token until it hurt. She looked at Julian, searching his face for the moment he chose which world he belonged to. Julian inhaled slowly, then said, loud and clear, a power line that hit like a hammer. Gideon, you're fired. Gideon blinked once. That's not how this works, he said softly. Julian stepped toward the desk, eyes burning. This is exactly how it works, Julian said. You forget whose name is on the glass. Gideon's calm cracked, just a hair. He lifted his hand and one of the men moved, fast, grabbing Mara's arm from behind, wrenching it up. Pain flashed white. The token slipped, caught by Mara's fingers at the last second. Serena's smile returned, satisfied and cruel. Julian's body moved on instinct, a lunge, but Gideon's other man blocked him with a forearm like a bar. Julian, Gideon said, voice suddenly low and dangerous. Don't make me do something you can't buy back. Mara's thumb hovered over her phone in her pocket, feeling the draft email like a heartbeat. Gideon leaned in toward her ear. You wanted to be seen, he whispered. Congratulations. Then, in one fluid motion, he dragged her toward the private elevator at the back of the suite, the one that went straight to the rooftop helipad. Julian fought forward, rage sharp, but Serena caught his sleeve, nails digging in. Choose, Serena hissed. Her or your life. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, and Mara was hauled inside, token clenched in her fist, eyes locked on Julian's. The doors started to close. Julian's face changed, decisions snapping into place, and he shoved past Serena hard enough to make her stumble, sprinting for the elevator as Gideon smiled like he'd finally forced Julian into a predictable move. The doors sealed with a whisper, and Julian stabbed the call button with his knuckles. Above them, the elevator began to climb. The private elevator shot upward with the smooth, silent confidence of something that had never been told no, and Mara's shoulder burned where the man's grip dug in. She kept her face blank anyway, because pain was just another signal you could refuse to broadcast. Gideon stood beside her like a calm doctor, one hand resting casually on the rail, the other holding his tablet as if he were monitoring vitals. You picked the wrong tower, he said to her without looking. Mara tasted iron in her mouth and forced her breathing into counts. No, she said. I picked the right height. Gideon's smile thinned. Height doesn't save you. The elevator chimed at the rooftop level, and the doors slid open to wind so cold it felt surgical. The helipad lights strobed in the grey morning, rotors of a black helicopter already idling, chopping the air into hard beats that made conversation feel like a fight. Beyond the pad, Manhattan spread out like a circuit board. Glass, steel, money moving in invisible lines. Gideon walked Mara forward, his men forming a loose triangle around her, not tight enough to look like kidnapping, tight enough to make it true. Serena was already up there, coat whipping, hair unmoving like it was engineered. She looked pleased, like this was an appointment she'd scheduled. "There she is," Serena called over the rotor noise, and her eyes pinned Mara with the same cold hunger she'd used on debtors and staff and anyone smaller. Julian burst out of the rooftop stairwell seconds later, chest heaving once before controls slammed back into place. He had the look of a man who'd been forced to learn gravity. He stopped when he saw Mara in Gideon's grip, and the air between them went tight, intimate, brutal. "Julian," Serena said, bright. "You're just in time." Gideon lifted his voice, measured, like he was offering terms at a board meeting. "Here's the reality," he said. "You're offline. You're exposed. Your access returns the moment this token is in my hand, and this compliance incident is closed. You sign the resignation, you walk away alive, and the waitress goes back to being invisible." Mara felt Julian's gaze on her fist, on the token hidden between her curled fingers like a last match. His eyes asked a question without asking it. What now? Mara swallowed, then leaned the smallest fraction toward him, as if the wind had pushed her. "Order 4, she said, barely moving her lips. Julian's jaw flexed. "You don't get to," Serena began, but Mara cut through her like a wire. "Order 4, Mara repeated, voice quiet, close to Julian's ear in the only way she could manage from 10 feet away. "You stop trying to win inside their rules." Julian's eyes narrowed, and Mara saw the old reflex in him, the urge to bargain, to outspend, to outthreat. She killed it with one more sentence, the one she'd saved because it was the truth, and truth was the only thing that scared people like Serena. "They already emptied your backup because they've been using your name," Mara said. "If you walk away, you'll be their puppet forever." Gideon watched Julian's face the way a surgeon watched a monitor. Serena watched it like a gambler. Mara watched it like her life depended on it, because it did. Julian's shoulders dropped a millimeter, not in surrender, in focus. "What's the ledger?" Julian said to Mara, and the question hit her like heat. He'd finally stopped pretending this was just about his wallet. Mara's pulse spiked. She hadn't wanted him to say it out loud here, on a rooftop with cameras and wind and predators, but there was no clean exit left. "The shadow ledger," Mara said, "is how Gideon moves money through your foundation and your offshore vehicles without signatures, using your token approvals as cover. It's how Serena buys politicians with donations and calls it charity. It's how people disappear financially without a bruise." Serena's smile didn't move, but her eyes sharpened to points. "You're delusional," Serena said. "She's reciting conspiracy," Gideon added, still calm, still surgical. "Julian, this ends now." He nodded once to his man. The man behind Mara tightened his grip, pain flaring bright. "Give me the token," Gideon said, holding out his hand like a teacher asking for a phone. Mara didn't. She looked at Julian and felt something dangerously close to trust try to bloom, and she crushed it into something usable. "Order 5, she said, louder now, letting the wind carry it. "You go on record." Julian's eyes flicked to the rooftop security camera housing near the door, then to the phone Serena held like a weapon, then to Gideon's tablet. "Right now," Mara continued, "you call Aurora Compliance on speaker. You say you suspect internal credential coercion. You name Gideon Park. You request immediate law enforcement escalation. You authorize a full audit. You do it in front of them." Serena's laugh cracked like glass. "If you do that," she hissed to Julian, "you destroy yourself." Gideon's calm finally wavered, just a hair, like a heartbeat skipping.
Julian looked at Mara, and for a second the rotor noise softened into nothing but the sound of his breath. "If I do this," Julian said, low, "they'll come for you harder." Mara's stomach twisted. She wanted to tell him that was already guaranteed, that her life had been a sequence of doors closing the moment she tried to speak. Instead, she gave him the only thing she could afford, a clean instruction. "Then follow the last order," she said. "Make it impossible to bury." Julian's hand went into his hoodie pocket and came out with a burner phone, cheap, unregistered, cash bought, something he wouldn't have had yesterday, something he'd gotten because Mara had already changed his instincts. Serena noticed, and her smile faltered for the first time. Julian hit call.
Put it on speaker. 1 ring. 2. A woman answered with the clipped tone of people who lived inside protocols. "Aurora Private Compliance," she said. Julian spoke over the rotor wash, voice loud, steady, irreversible. "This is Julian Crest. My credentials have been coerced. I believe my CFO, Gideon Park, has executed unauthorized dual control actions using my identity. I'm requesting immediate escalation and law enforcement contact. I'm authorizing full access to audit logs and vault retrieval records." Gideon lunged forward on pure instinct, hand reaching, not for Mara, for the phone, because paper trails were the only blood that mattered here. Julian stepped back, out of reach, eyes locked on Gideon like a gate slamming shut. "Mr. Crest," the compliance voice sharpened instantly. "Confirm, are you under duress?" Julian glanced at Mara. Mara's chest tightened. Serena's eyes went wild, and for the first time her polish couldn't hide panic. Mara forced her voice through. "He's under attempted coercion," she said. And then she did it. She pulled her own phone out, thumb hitting send on the draft like it was a detonator. Somewhere in the city, 3 inboxes received a sealed package. Names, timestamps, log screenshots, the dust outline of an empty box translated into data. Gideon froze, hearing the click that wasn't audible, feeling the shift he couldn't control. Serena's face changed, calculation turning into damage control. "Julian," she snapped, stepping closer, reaching for him now, nails out. "Hang up." Julian didn't. He spoke clearly. "I am not under duress," he said into the phone. "But she is. Her name is Marianne Vale, and if anything happens to her, it will be because of the people standing in front of me." Serena flinched at the name on record like it was a slap, because names were evidence. Gideon's man tightened his grip on Mara again, ready to drag her to the helicopter and vanish her into weather and money. But the rooftop door banged open behind them. Tower security, then more, moving faster now because compliance had teeth, because liability was louder than loyalty. Gideon's eyes flicked toward the stairwell, then toward the helicopter, calculating exits, and Mara used that half-second the way she'd used half-seconds all day. She drove her elbow back into the man's ribs, hard enough to break his breath, twisted free, and shoved the token toward Julian with a quick, decisive motion. "Order 6, she said, voice shaking only a little now. "You don't put this back in your pocket." Julian caught it, fingers closing around cold metal, like it was a confession. Serena lunged for it, fury naked, and Julian stepped between them. No guards, no entourage, just his body as a decision. Gideon's face hardened into something ugly. "You're choosing her," he said to Julian, like it was a diagnosis. Julian didn't look away. "I'm choosing truth," he said, and it sounded strange in his mouth, like a word he'd never used without quotation marks. Sirens rose faintly below, distant but real. Serena's eyes darted, already searching for angles, for plausible deniability, for a way to make this someone else's fault. Gideon backed 2 steps toward the helicopter, hands up, smile returning in a thinner form, the kind you wear when you're already planning the next war. "This isn't over,"
he said. Mara met his gaze, wind cutting her eyes, and felt something quiet settle in her chest. It didn't have to be over today to be won today. She turned, not running, just walking fast toward the rooftop door, blending into motion, because the most dangerous thing she could do now was stay visible. Julian watched her go, tokens still in his hand, and for the first time his power wasn't a wallet. It was a choice he couldn't unmake. When Mara reached the stairwell, she didn't look back.
She didn't need to. The city below was already shifting, calls being made, accounts being flagged, access being revoked, doors closing on people who'd spend their lives closing doors on others. If that final turn hit you, tap like and subscribe for more cinematic stories like this. And tell me in the comments, would you have used the billionaire's wallet to get rich, or to burn the whole system down?